After the flash of lightning, the ocean sank back into darkness. The figure was gone, as though it had never existed. I stared at the raging waves, at the black cliffs, at the gray curtain of rain, but I saw no one. Yet the unease remained. It lingered, in the room, in the air, in the eyes of Victoria and Sebastian. At last, I broke the silence. "Who is Lucian?" No one answered. Victoria turned toward the window. Sebastian stared into the fire, as though both hoped the question would simply dissolve on its own. But it did not. It remained between us, heavy, inevitable. "You're both afraid of him." Sebastian let out a quiet laugh, but it sounded strained. "Afraid? No." He shook his head. "Fear implies hope for survival, and there is no escaping Lucian." Thunder rolled beyond the windows. Victoria slowly lowered herself into a chair. For the first time, she looked genuinely exhausted. Not like a woman, not like an immortal being, but like someone carrying a memory far too heavy to bear. "He's older than we are," she said. "Much older." "How much older?" "No one knows." Sebastian lifted his gaze. "I have seen documents from the 14th century. Even then, he was already considered ancient." My mouth went dry. "That's impossible. You use that word far too often," Sebastian replied, "and every time you are wrong." For several seconds, only the sound of rain filled the room. Then Victoria spoke again, very quietly, as though recounting a legend she feared hearing herself. "Among our kind, there are old stories. They are told rarely, usually in whispers, because some tales are better left forgotten, especially if they can hear them." "Who can hear them?" I asked. Victoria looked directly into my eyes. "Those the stories are about." A chill ran down my spine. "Long ago, there were very few immortals," she continued. "So few that everyone knew everyone else. They appeared in different countries, in different centuries, but their origins were always a mystery, until Lucian appeared." "What did he do?" "He began asking questions," Sebastian answered. "Dangerous questions." The fire in the hearth suddenly crackled louder, as though protesting the very words. "Lucian wanted to know where we came from," Victoria said. "Who came first? Who created the others? What lay hidden at the beginning of our history? And one day, he found an answer." The room became very quiet. "Where?" I asked. "In the desert," Sebastian replied, "among the ruins of a city that no longer appears on any map." He spoke as though he had seen those ruins himself. Perhaps he had. "Lucian vanished for 10 years, Victoria continued, "and when he returned," she fell silent. "And when he returned, he was no longer the same." Sebastian finished the sentence. "What changed?" By this time he answered, and for the first time that evening his voice became truly serious, genuinely serious. "Everything." Lightning flashed beyond the windows. "Before that, we were still somewhat like humans, stronger, faster, harder to kill, but still close to what we once had been. After Lucian returned," he paused. Some began to disappear. I frowned. Disappear. The ancients, the oldest among us, those who had lived for 1,000 years, 1,500 years, they simply vanished, one after another. Was someone killing them? Sebastian looked at me. No. Then what happened? His gaze grew heavy. They were found. Those words sent ice through my veins. Where? Everywhere. Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, Prague, Venice. Victoria closed her eyes, as though seeing those memories once more. They looked as though something had been taken from them, she said. Not blood, not life, something else, something more important. Their souls? No one answered, and that silence was more frightening than any reply. At that moment, somewhere below in the house, a floorboard creaked, very softly, almost imperceptibly. But Victoria was on her feet instantly. So was Sebastian. I watched their expressions change. They had heard something I had not. No, Victoria whispered. Sebastian walked to the library door, slowly opened it. The corridor beyond was empty, only a long stretch of darkness. And then I noticed a scent. Very faint, almost impossible to detect. The smell of old paper, dust, and winter air. Sebastian froze. He's here. My heart slammed against my ribs. Who? He did not even turn around. Lucian. The next second, a figure appeared at the far end of the corridor, a tall man in a black coat. He stood perfectly still. Not threatening, not approaching, simply watching. His face was hidden in shadow, but his eyes, I could see his eyes. They were silver, not gray, not blue, silver, as though they reflected moonlight itself. Never in my life had I felt anything like it. Not fear. Something far worse. As though, in the presence of this being, the human mind ceased to understand its own place in the universe. Lucian took a step forward. Then another. No supernatural movements, no display of power. Yet with each step, the silence around him deepened. At last, he stopped and looked directly at Victoria. Hello. His voice was surprisingly calm. Very human. That was exactly why it made me want to run. Because behind that, humanity lurked something infinitely ancient. Lucian shifted his gaze to Sebastian. You still protect her. Then he looked at me and unexpectedly smiled. Now this is interesting. Everything inside me tightened. What? His smile widened. So, after all these years, I have finally found the one. Victoria stepped forward sharply. No. For the first time, true terror rang in her voice. Not for herself. For me. And Lucian spoke words that froze the blood in my veins. Jonathan Blackwood, last descendant of the Harlow family. I have been searching for you for nearly 300 years. Time seemed to stop. I could hear the sound of my own heart, the ticking of an ancient clock, the distant roar of the ocean, and nothing else. The world narrowed to a single sentence. I have been searching for you for nearly 300 years. You're mistaken. The words escaped automatically. Lucian smiled, not mockingly, almost sympathetically, like an adult listening to a child who has yet to grasp the obvious. No, Jonathan, I am very rarely mistaken. Victoria stood between us. Sebastian stepped forward as well. For the first time, they were on the same side, and that troubled me more than anything else. Don't drag him into this, Victoria said. Lucian looked at her. For a long time, a very long time, there was no hostility in his gaze, only endless weariness. I have no choice. And he spoke so quietly that I barely heard him. There's always a choice, she replied. Lucian shook his head. Not this time. Lightning flashed beyond the windows. For an instant, his silver eyes gleamed with cold light. What is happening? I asked. Who are the Harlows? No one seemed eager to answer. At last, Lucian sighed. The Harlow family disappeared long ago. That is precisely why you were so difficult to find. He walked to one of the bookshelves. His fingers brushed the aged wood. In the year 1732, there lived a man named Edward Harlow. The name meant nothing to me. Who was he? Your ancestor. Lucian looked directly at me. And the only man who ever managed to stop me. A heavy silence settled over the room. Even Sebastian appeared surprised. That's impossible, he said. Yes, Lucian agreed. That is exactly why I still remember him. He turned away, as though the memory caused him pain. Edward was a scholar, a historian, a collector of ancient manuscripts. He sought answers to questions that should never have been asked. Lucian gave a humorless smile. And in that regard, we were very much alike. I listened and felt a strange unease growing inside me, as though some part of me already knew this story, though that should have been impossible. What did he find? Lucian was silent for a long moment. Me. Thunder rolled beyond the windows. And what happened then? And this time, Victoria answered. As they became friends, I turned toward her. How you knew him? She nodded. Yes. Sadness crossed her face. I knew him very well. For the first time, I truly grasped the scale of her life. The people she spoke of had died centuries ago. Entire ages had passed since then. And yet, for her, they were memories. Edward was an extraordinary man, she continued. He was not afraid of immortals. He did not worship us. He did not hate us. He saw us for what we truly were. And what was that? Victoria smiled sadly. Lost. For a while, no one spoke. Then, Lucian said, Edward was the first to understand the truth. Those words immediately caught my attention. What truth? And then something strange happened. Lucian looked out the window, at the ocean, at the rain, at the distant horizon. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not concern, not caution, fear. We should not exist. A chill spread across my skin. What does that mean? No one answered at once. The old clock struck midnight. Each chime echoed through the house. 1, 2, 3. At last, Lucian spoke again. All living things are meant to die. That is the order of the world. He looked down at his own hands. But one day, someone broke that order. The room became very cold. Who? That is what I have spent 1,000 years trying to discover. His voice grew quieter. And that is why all of this began. Suddenly, I understood. No, I felt it. That the conversation was moving toward something terrible. Toward knowledge that none of us wished to speak aloud. What did Edward Harlow find? I asked. Lucian looked directly into my eyes. A door. The single word sent ice through my veins. What door? But no one answered. Lightning flashed once more beyond the windows. And in that light I noticed something strange. Lucian looked different. Completely different. For a fraction of a second, only an instant. His face became old, unimaginably old, as though millennia lay hidden beneath a human mask. Then the vision vanished. But I'd already seen it. And I understood one thing. No matter how ancient Sebastian might be, no matter how unbelievable immortals seemed, Lucian belonged to something else, something far older. He spoke again. Edward Harlow hid the key. My heart skipped a beat. What key? The key to the door. Victoria closed her eyes, as though hoping to stop the inevitable. But it was too late. Lucian took another step toward me. And before he died, he left behind a map. Where? His silver eyes met mine. Inside your blood. At that moment, pain exploded through my head, blinding, unbearable. I screamed. Images burst before my eyes, not my memories, someone else's. A dark forest. Candles. An ancient book. A stone arch standing among ruins. And a man whose face looked remarkably like my own. He stared directly at me across the centuries and spoke a single sentence. If you are seeing this, then the door has begun to open once again. And then the world plunged into darkness. First, there was darkness. Not the ordinary darkness behind closed eyes. Not oblivion, not sleep. It was a place without time, without sound, without a body, without the very concept of existence. I felt as though I were falling, but not downward, and not upward. Somewhere through my own memory, through someone else's memory, through centuries. Gradually, the darkness began to fade. A light appeared before me, faint, yellow, flickering. The light of a candle, then came walls. Stone, damp, ancient. I saw a small room, a table, books, an inkwell, a window beyond which a snowstorm raged. And then I saw a man. He sat at the table, writing something in a thick journal. The man appeared to be around 40 years old. Dark hair, tired eyes, harsh features. But what struck me most was something else. He looked like me. Not exactly, but enough. Enough to leave no doubt. This was Edward Harlow. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked directly at me, as if he could see me, as if he knew that someone, 3 centuries later, would be watching him. So, it has finally come to this, he said. I froze. That was impossible. But Edward continued to stare straight into my eyes. If you can hear my voice, then Lucian has found you. A chill ran down my spine. And that means I have failed. Slowly, he closed the journal. I'm sorry. There was so much regret in his voice that it unsettled me. I had hoped the door would remain closed forever. And the wind howled outside the window. Edward rose to his feet and walked to the fireplace. Right now, you want to know the truth. Everyone wants to know the truth. That is how all of this began. For a long moment, he stared into the flames, as though gathering his strength. Lucian lied to you, but not because he wished to deceive you. he does not know the whole truth himself. At those words, something tightened inside me. If even Lucian did not know everything, then how deep was this mystery? He believes he is searching for the beginning, the origin of the immortals, the first source, the first mistake. Edward shook his head. But the truth is far worse. And the candles suddenly flickered. How the shadows on the walls began to move. I felt unease. An ancient unease. Once, humanity believed that our world was the only one, Edward said. They were mistaken. My heart stopped. There are other places. He spoke calmly, as if discussing a neighboring town. Not heaven, not hell, not paradise, not purgatory, nothing imagined by religion. The shadow behind him grew longer. Simply other worlds. Suddenly, I realized something. I did not want to hear anymore, not at all. But it was too late. There have always been boundaries between worlds, Edward continued. Strong boundaries, ancient boundaries. Slowly, he turned toward me. And then someone discovered a way to create a crack. The room seemed colder. Where? Here. He touched his chest. In our world. The candles went out. All at once. Only the firelight remained. Through that crack, something came through. Edward's voice became barely audible. Not an army, not a god, not a demon. He fell silent. What? Edward looked at me for a long time. A very long time. And finally answered. A witness. The word explained nothing, yet somehow it frightened me more than anything else. What is a witness? Not who, what? The fire suddenly flared brighter. For a brief moment I saw terror in Edward's eyes, real terror, even after centuries. It did not come to conquer. It did not come to kill. It did not come to rule. Edward clenched his fists. It simply watched. A shiver crawled down my spine. And what happened? The world began to change. Silence. People began seeing impossible things. Some went mad, some disappeared, some became something else. I thought of Victoria, of Sebastian, of all the others. And suddenly I understood. The immortals. Edward nodded. Yes. The room fell silent. so silent that I could hear my own breathing. We are not a separate species, not chosen, not cursed. He looked directly into my eyes. We are a consequence. A consequence of what? Of the day someone opened the door. Cold washed over me. And the key? Edward's face darkened. That is why Lucian is searching for you. He stepped closer. So close that I could see every line on his face. Because I hid the key not to open the door. His voice hardened. But to ensure that no one would ever open it again, then something appeared behind him. A shadow. Enormous, impossible. It moved through the darkness of the room. Slowly. Far too slowly. Edward noticed where I was looking and spun around. For the first time in our conversation, fear twisted his face. Real fear, deadly fear. No, he whispered. The shadow was approaching. Without sound. Without shape. Without a face. And yet I could feel its gaze. It was not looking at Edward. It was looking at me. Across 300 years. Across time. Across memory. Edward stepped forward, as though trying to shield me with his own body. You must not see it. The shadow stopped, and then a voice spoke. Neither male nor female. As though 1,000 beings were speaking at once. Too late. The candles burst into flame on their own. The fire turned black. Edward screamed, "Wake up!" The room shattered apart. Stone, books, flames, shadows. Everything vanished. And I opened my eyes. And the first thing I saw was Victoria's face. She was kneeling beside me. There was fear in her eyes. Jonathan. I tried to answer, but I could not. Because in the corner of the library stood that same shadow. Only now it was not a memory. It was here, real. And for the first time since I had met him, Lucian's silver eyes looked afraid. People often believe that fear has a limit, that there's some final step of terror beyond which it is impossible to be more afraid. That is not true. Fear is endless. It grows with knowledge. And that night, I learned more about it than in all my previous life. The shadow stood in the far corner of the library, motionless, silent. It did not resemble a human being. Yet neither was it a shapeless stain. It was more like the absence of something, a void that had taken form, a place where reality itself seemed unfinished. I could not see it clearly. Every time I tried to focus on it, my gaze slipped away. My mind refused to hold its image, as if the human brain had never been designed for such a thing. Victoria stood in front of me, Sebastian beside her. Both were staring at the creature, and for the first time, neither of them was pretending to be strong. Because some things are too ancient for courage. "It should not be here," Lucian said quietly. His voice trembled, only slightly, but it trembled. I remembered Edward Harlow's words, "the witness." And suddenly, I understood. This was it. The shadow tilted its head slightly, if it even had a head. Then something strange happened. The clocks in the room began to stop. First one, then another. The antique chronometer beside the fireplace fell silent. Then Sebastian's pocket watch. Then the clock in the hallway. Tick. Silence. Tick. Silence. And finally, absolute stillness. "It affects time," Victoria whispered. Lucian slowly nodded. As it always has. The shadow took a step. Just one. But the space around it distorted, as if the air had become water. The world shuddered. For a brief moment, I saw the library differently. Very old, half-ruined, covered in dust, empty. Then the vision vanished. "It shows possibilities," Lucian said. "Possibilities, the future, the past, things that never happened, and things that still might." I stared at the creature, and suddenly noticed something horrifying. It was staring at me as well. Not at Victoria, not at Sebastian, not at Lucian. At me, as though it had come for me alone. A cold emptiness spread through my chest. Why? The question escaped my lips before I could stop it. Why me? Why my family? Why is all of this happening? The shadow became still. Then a voice spoke. The same voice from the memory. 1,000 voices speaking at once, because the door remembers. An icy chill ran down my spine. What does that mean? It was Lucian who answered. Very quietly. It means Edward told the truth. He looked older, much older, as though the weight of centuries had settled upon his shoulders once again. The door never forgets those who have touched it. I looked at him. My ancestor touched it. Yes. And now, Lucian closed his eyes. Now it remembers his blood. Silence. Only the wind battered the windows of the mansion. The shadow took another step. And suddenly the world vanished. Not completely, only for an instant. But that instant was enough. I saw something. A colossal stone archway. So ancient that the pyramids would have seemed newly built beside it. It stood in the middle of an endless desert. Symbols shimmered across the stone. Not letters, not runes, something else. And a man stood before the archway. Edward Harlow. Young. Alive. Afraid. In his hands he held an object. A key. A strange metallic key made from a black material that looked like both metal and obsidian at once. And beyond the archway, something moved. Something so vast that the mind refused to comprehend its size. I saw only a fragment, a shadow of a silhouette, an outline, a glimpse. But it was enough. Because in that moment I realized one thing. The witness was not the most terrifying being beyond the door. Was the guardian, or the observer. And the thought alone made me want to scream. The vision disappeared. I was standing in the library again. But now, even Lucian's hands were trembling. "No," he whispered. The shadow slowly turned toward him. And for the first time that evening, something impossible happened. Lucian stepped backward. One step. A single step. But it was enough. Enough for everyone else to understand the scale of what was happening. "You saw it?" Victoria asked. He nodded. "Yes." "What?" For several seconds, Lucian said nothing. Then he looked at me. And I will never forget the expression on his face. Because it was the look of a man who had spent 1,000 years searching for answers and had finally found them. Only the answers were worse than any of his fears. "The door is opening." My heart stopped. "But the key is hidden." "Not anymore." The words came from the shadow, spoken by all the voices at once. And in that same instant, pain shot through my chest, so intense that I fell to my knees. Like I screamed. Victoria rushed toward me. But it was too late. Beneath the skin of my chest, lines began to appear. Thin, glowing, they formed a pattern. A map. The very map Edward Harlow had hidden 300 years ago. The map leading to the key. The shadow watched me, without blinking, without moving. And the voice of 1,000 beings declared, "Now, all roads lead to the door once more." At that moment, every window in the mansion exploded at once. An icy wind burst into the room, and the shadow vanished. But the most terrifying thing remained. The glowing map on my chest did not disappear. And for the first time in 300 years, someone once again knew the path to the key. After the shadow vanished, no one moved. It seemed as though even the wind had fallen still. Only the shards of glass continued to drift onto the library floor, one after another, with a faint ringing sound. I remained on my knees. My hands were trembling. My heart pounded so violently that it felt as if it were trying to break free from my chest. Beneath my shirt, the pattern continued to glow. Thin, silver lines emerged beneath my skin, alive, pulsing. Victoria carefully touched my chest, then immediately pulled her hand away, as though she had been burned. "What is it?" I whispered. She did not answer. Instead, Lucian spoke. "The seal has awakened." His face looked unusually grim. I had hoped this would never happen. Sebastian stepped closer. He studied the glowing lines, then quietly cursed. "It really is a map." I looked up. "And where does it lead?" No one answered immediately, because they already knew. To the place where the key had been hidden, and to the place none of them ever wished to return. "We need to leave," Victoria said. Immediately. Lucian nodded, which by itself was alarming. A being who had lived for an unknown number of centuries did not believe in haste, yet now he looked as though every minute mattered. They have already felt it. "Who?" I asked. "The others," Sebastian replied. And somehow that answer frightened me more than anything else. Because until that moment, I had almost forgotten one important fact. There was not only Victoria, not only Sebastian, not only Lucian. There were others. Many others. And some of them might have been waiting centuries for an event like this. We left the mansion before dawn. Lucian's old automobile sped along the deserted coast of Maine. The sky was slowly beginning to brighten. Sebastian sat behind the wheel. Lucian remained silent, staring through the window. Victoria sat beside me. No one spoke. At last, I could not bear it any longer. "Where are we going?" Lucian did not answer immediately. to Boston. Why? Because the map is not complete yet. I frowned. What does that mean? He looked at me. Edward was a very cautious man. For a brief moment, a trace of respect crossed his face. And so cautious that he hid the path in pieces. In pieces? The map only reveals the first location. Something tightened inside me. And where is it? For the first time that night, Lucian smiled, a very tired smile. Where it all began. By evening, we reached Boston. The city lived its ordinary life. Pedestrians hurried along the streets. Street lamps glowed. Restaurants opened their doors. People laughed. And no one suspected that a group of beings older than the history of the nation itself was walking among them. The car stopped beside an old cemetery. I recognized it immediately. The Blackwood family plot. The place where generations of my ancestors had been buried. And where one day I had been meant to be buried as well. No, I whispered. Lucian looked toward the cemetery gates. Yes. We entered. Twilight thickened between the gravestones. Ancient trees swayed in the wind. Branches creaked overhead. The place felt ancient, almost forgotten. Yet Lucian moved with confidence, as though he had been here before. A very long time ago. At last, we stopped before an old mausoleum. Carved into the stone wall was a single name, Blackwood. An unpleasant chill ran through me. What is here? The answer, Lucian said. He approached the door. The stone appeared seamless. No lock, no handle. Then something strange happened. The glowing lines on my chest flared brighter. So bright that they shone through my clothing. The stone began to tremble. A grinding sound echoed through the air. And the mausoleum door slowly opened on its own. A breath of cold air emerged from within. Dust, age, and something far older. Older than time itself. We stepped inside. An underground corridor descended into darkness. Very deep. Far deeper than it should have. The staircase seemed endless. Our footsteps echoed against the walls. Minutes stretched by. Until we finally reached the lowest level. And then I understood. This place had never appeared on any family plans. Never. Because it had been built long before my family existed. At the center of the underground chamber stood a stone sarcophagus. Upon its lid rested a book. A single book. Thick, black, untitled. Lucian stopped. And for the first time, he looked genuinely surprised. Impossible, Victoria asked. He stared only at the book. It was supposed to disappear. At that moment, applause echoed from somewhere in the darkness. Slow, unhurried. Everyone turned at once. A stranger stood against the far wall. A tall man in a gray suit. His face was hidden in shadow, but his smile was perfectly visible. Wide, utterly satisfied. "Good evening," he said. A chill ran down my spine at the sound of his voice. Because neither Victoria nor Sebastian, nor even Lucian looked surprised by his appearance. They looked doomed. The stranger slowly bowed. "It's been a long time, old friend." He was looking directly at Lucian. Then he added, "Or should I call you by your real name?" For the first time in this entire story, I did not see fear in the eyes of the immortals. I saw it in Lucian's eyes. And then I understood. We had just met someone whom even he feared.